New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
What if the person you think you are is just a fraction of who you truly are? What if years of conditioning and surviving in a challenging world have left you clinging to strategies and beliefs that mask your truest nature? I'm Catherine Duca, psychotherapist and self-esteem coach, and you're listening to Who Do You Think You Are? A show that looks beneath our psychological masks and uncovers our profoundly messy, beautiful, brilliant, tender-hearted essence. Join me as we go in search of the hidden power of our true selves. I'm so glad you're here.
And you know that is absolutely true. Welcome, welcome, dear listeners. There is no place I would rather be this Sunday evening than right here with you right now. I want to welcome you to Who Do You Think You Are? This is a podcast devoted, as you may know, to your well-being, to your emotional truth, and to your right to live a life that honors you. On this show, we talk about how you can cultivate the highest regard for yourself, how to live from a place of genuine self-respect and self-love, and how you can make yourself a priority in your own life. Join me each week for insights and strategies designed to help you drop your psychological masks and all the layers of defense mechanisms and armor, connect with your truest essence, and live the life you desire with more ease and more purpose. Why? Because we know that when we approach life in this way, we naturally and effortlessly have more room, more generosity, and more love for one another. And dear listeners, I ask you, as I do each week, when have we needed love more than this very moment? So I welcome each and every one of you. Before we dive in, I want to remind you of something very important tonight. This podcast is a space for reflection, for storytelling. You know, I share some of my stories and you share some of yours in the chat, and emotional exploration. But this show is not a substitute. It is not a substitute for professional support. So if you are struggling with something pressing or painful or overwhelming, and it's got you, and you can't shake it, and you can't seem to get through, and it has you stuck, please, please, please reach out to a qualified professional, a qualified psychotherapist or a mental health counselor. You deserve care that is attuned, that is consistent, and grounded in expertise. And if you don't know where to start, let me know. I'm happy to help you. Really, you can reach out to me. Just drop me an email at catherineduca.com. Let me know what you need, and I'll point you toward a resource that can help, or a directory, or practitioners who might be a good fit for you. I want you to know you are not alone, and you are not too much. I repeat, you are not too much with whatever you are feeling. And you don't have to navigate this alone. Good help is available. So please, please remember that. And one other admin note, if you will. If you've been listening and you've been deriving benefit from the content on the show, or if you're tuning in tonight for the very first time and like what you hear, find it informative and valuable, please like, share, and subscribe. You know, that keeps the algorithm happy, and that means everything, because when the algorithm is satisfied, the show goes out to more people. So let's all do what we can. Like, share, and subscribe. Okay, so here we are. If you were with me last week, you know that we talked about when goodbyes aren't mutual, when someone you care about, perhaps you were involved with them, or perhaps it was a friend or family member, and the relationship ended, not necessarily mutually, or if it was mutual, you did not have a chance to speak your mind and share your truth. And that had you ruminating, and that had you, really hooked. I talked about a client of mine who checked her telephone constantly to see if this person who walked away after they were in a relationship, she checked her phone consistently for 2 years to see if there was a message from him. So we talked about the whys and the wherefores and what you can do about that. And I got a number of questions to go deeper, questions about that, and requests, I should say, to go deeper. And so tonight I'm going to do just that, because I noticed that we can't really talk about a subject like that without also talking about a twin topic. And so tonight we're going to look at another very tender topic. It's a topic that I would say is nearly an emotional epidemic, at least in this culture, in Western culture. Now, it does not come with a lot of fanfare or drama. In fact, most of us don't even realize we're doing this thing. But it is the thing that underlies our stance in life, our stance with other people. And here's what it looks like. And then we'll name it. And as you're listening, tune in and ask yourself if this is you in any way, or if this is someone you care about. If it's someone you care about, maybe you'll let them know about the show and they can look at it, review it, listen to it, anytime. It lives here on the station, New Thought Media Network, and it also lives on my YouTube page, Catherine Duca, Confidence Builder. So you can get these archived shows 24/7, any day of the week. It looks like you're in an interaction with someone and they say something and you immediately feel as though you disagree, or it hits you in a certain way, it lands with you, and you have another point of view that you would like to share, but you don't. What happens is you swallow your opinion or your point of view, and you kind of smile instead of speaking your truth. Or you say yes often, too often, when you don't want to say yes, when you mean no, but somehow yes rolls off your tongue. Or you stay silent to avoid conflict or discord. You act as if everything is okay, but really inwardly you might feel as though you're at odds with yourself, or things are unraveling. You might volunteer for something, right? Do you ever do that? Someone asks you for something, or you're in a group and your hand automatically flies up. It's as though it has a mind of its own. I'll do it. I'll show up. How many times have we done that? Even when you are exhausted, even when your tank is on E, I'll do it. So acting, behaving, speaking in a way that is completely contrary to what you may be feeling in any given moment, this behavior has a name. There's terminology for this, and it's called self-abandonment. Self-abandonment. Now, that is a very heavy term, don't you think? Self-abandonment. But it applies. You know, in my practice, I literally, not a day goes by where someone doesn't tell me that they do or don't do something with people in terms of interactions because they're afraid of abandonment. Sometimes oftentimes they use that very word. I'm afraid of abandonment. Or they say, if I just meet them, hi, Catherine, I'm here to talk about my abandonment issues. Oh, okay. Tell me more. What do you mean by abandonment issues? I just think everybody's going to leave me. Oh, and what do you do about that? Well, I don't rock the boat. I don't make waves. I don't cause controversy. I am so careful. I am so beige that I don't give anyone the chance to walk away from me because I don't think I can handle it. Well, as big an issue as that, and you can feel the weight of those words, can't you? As heavy as that is, imagine when we behave in the ways I mentioned, we are abdicating our own self-care. We are abandoning our own well-being, our own positive regard. It's as though we're throwing ourselves under the bus. And we do it without even flinching sometimes. Why is that? Well, probably because we've been doing it for such a long time. Probably for as long as we can remember, maybe as long as we have been alive. This is a characteristic or a behavior, a way of being that is not innate. I repeat, it is not innate. It is a learned behavior. And it's not as though someone specifically taught you to be that way. It's not like anyone said to you, I want you to swallow what you feel. I want you to shrink and play small so that I feel comfortable. No one expressly said that to you, but you inferred that. You absorbed that message when you tried to do that way back when, and you encountered all kinds of things. You encountered disapproval or indifference, or you were punished, chastised, insulted. It was met with sarcasm. Why can't you be more like your sister? A whole host of responses that very well may have given you the message that what you expressed, AKA your truth, your feelings, your emotion, your opinion, did not go over very well. And if you had a few of those experiences in childhood, you probably did what children do. They very quickly sort of adapt, pivot. They do not keep playing the same tune. Not when a parent or a caregiver or an authority figure disapproves of what you said. It's either met with one of two responses, either outright defiance, or the other way, swallowing what you feel, suppressing what you have to say, suppressing your emotions. And when you suppress is like submerging a beach ball. The wonderful visionary Debbie Ford, Ford, who passed away a few years ago, wrote a wonderful book, The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. And it was she who used this analogy. These parts of ourselves that we feel were judged by other people, we internalized that judgment. And anytime that behavior wants to come to the surface, we very quickly submerge it. And Debbie likened it to trying to hold a beach ball underwater. And not just one beach ball, several beach balls. The way you feel about this, the way you feel about that, your sad feelings, your angry feelings, your vulnerable feelings. All of those are, quote, beach balls that we learn to hide under the water. Now, think about it. It takes a certain amount of pressure, doesn't it, to keep those beach balls submerged, because they have a natural trajectory. They want to float, but we're holding them down. And then what happens is we have this ball and that ball and that ball and all the balls. How long do you think we can keep that up? Not very. And that's when Debbie would say they pop up in the most inopportune times and in the most inopportune ways. Right? They come out sideways. You blurt something out. You're sarcastic or snarky to a person you're just beginning to date, or you say the wrong thing at a meeting in that regard, because the beach ball cannot take the submersion. So this is what happens. We live a lifetime, and then what happens is in our personality, we absorb the coping mechanism. And this is a very interesting thing about our personalities. Think about the people you know. If you were to scan your contact list and give each person you know pretty well 3 words that describe their personalities, it would be very interesting. What you would probably be describing, without realizing it, is the way in which their personalities defended themselves. What do I mean by that? When we're children and, there's some pain in the home life, right? Emotional unavailability from a caregiver, or a caregiver is immature or overwhelmed or physically actually ill or emotionally ill, compromised in some way. We do not put the burden on them of our feelings. I mean, we might do that once or twice, and then we quickly learn, that's not a safe bet. So we internalize all these feelings, and our personality coalesces really around these primary ways in which we defended ourselves. Now, they're not, please hear me, these coping strategies are not negative. They're not negative, they're not bad, nothing like that. In fact, on the surface, they can be viewed as positive. For example, one of the things I did, and I'll give you a peek into one of my many psychological masks, is not so much in my home life, actually, but in my school life. I went to a school, happened to have been a Catholic school, very traditional Catholic school back in the 1960s, you can imagine. And there was a lot of corporal punishment. Children were hit, children were punished. The whole class was punished, got in trouble, had to kneel for an hour because I gave the wrong answer in class. So I was punished and the whole class was punished. And this was how it was every day. So imagine. And so I developed 2 masks around that. I became a really good girl, a really, really good girl. I was teacher's pet. I was so agreeable. I was the child every teacher loved. Now, was that really in my nature? Yes, I think it was. But it was also a strategy, not a conscious one. I did not say at 8 years old, hey, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to create the psychological mask. No, children don't have the ability to articulate that, but it's an automatic defense mechanism where I became a good girl so that I could be beyond reproach. I made sure I got good grades so that I would be praised. You see, yes, I was probably a smart child. I mean, I was a smart child, but I put some spin on that ball. I strategically wanted to be a smart child so that I would be praised instead of punished. And I became, in my later years, I would say high school, I became kind of a class clown. I would have to say, not an annoying class clown, I don't think, but I was a very comical kid. And I think I was clever and witty. And I think people liked my humor. And it's still with me today. And it's a quality that I really like about myself. But I know that, again, part of my unconscious agenda was to use my humor to deflect my pain. You know, I lightened up the way I felt inside with being comedic. And although I was really humorous, my big reason for being that way was to defend against how frightened I felt at school, because I felt I might be next. I might be humiliated, and I was. But I was always trying to, deal with that in my own mind. So I became someone who did not challenge authority. I did not talk back, even though I had very strong opinions. I just had this veneer about myself that I'm easygoing. I'm la-di-da. I go with the flow. All the while, I had this undercurrent of very strong, very deep emotions within. I was sad. I was angry. I was irritated. I felt lonely. And this is interesting because I was also a very popular child. I happen to have been president of my class every year, high school and college, every year. I was popular, but I don't think anyone could really get close to me. Isn't that an interesting paradox? Popular, most valuable, sneaky player on the basketball court because I was 5 foot even, but I was a good shot and I was a bit of a sneak. So the other team discounted me until they caught on. So outwardly, I really had a good time. But inwardly, I felt alone. And I know that I felt pensive and I would even say depressed. So I'm sharing this with you to illustrate how one's personality takes shape. Yes, each of us comes into this world, is born with a certain constitution, right? You often hear parents say this, oh, my first child was this way, and my second child came out of the womb completely differently, had a completely different temperament. That's true. Nature, nurture. But the lion's share of our personality style is learned. It is adaptive. And so here we have this notion of I have to be a certain way in order to feel like I'm okay, in order to feel as though I'm loved, in order to feel valued, in order to feel wanted. I have to be this certain way. And so there's some energy spin on the ball, if you will, on have to be a certain way. There's striving there. And so striving can look like an outwardly directed behavior, be a certain way outwardly, or it can be the complete opposite. And I think self-abandonment is most often wrapped in this internal expression where one goes mute, one freezes, one cannot find one's own needs. Because here's the thing, And really, it comes down to our caregivers. And I want to emphasize, I am not indicting any caregiver. Not at all. For this conversation, I am merely concentrating on the cause and effect of certain kinds of parenting styles. And if one had a parent who really didn't let you as a child, here's a word, more terminology, differentiate, then that's very likely where the problem comes in. And I'm just going to give a quick commercial on differentiation. And then we're going to go to a break because this is a mouthful. But differentiation is very important because when, as adults, we can't express ourselves, meaning we can't go contrary to someone. We can't assert ourselves. We can't say we disagree. We can't say the steak is too well done. May I send this back and have another? You don't want to ruffle anybody's feathers. And of course, examples that go well beyond that, right? It's when we can't say, I feel hurt by what you said. I feel angry with what you said. I feel really sad by how you handled something or how you responded to what I said. I won't. Well, it's I won't and I can't because I won't go up against you, contradict you, because I may not feel like I have the autonomous right to do that. And that likely stems from a caregiver who didn't allow you to differentiate, who saw you as an extension of their happiness rather than a person in your own right. Now, children have to be raised, of course, with age-appropriate limits. But within those limits, at each developmental stage, the child has to have choice. If the child is told what to do or never told what to do, because it can go two ways. A parent can be overly controlling or can be emotionally absent. Those two extremes leave a child, and this is so critically important, and this pertains to so many people who come into my practice. It can leave a child without a certain type of foundation that in adulthood looks like, I don't know what my rights are. The only right I know I have is the right to make you happy, the right to please you, the right to comfort you. I don't have any rights of my own. So the worst thing, really, the worst thing you can say to someone in that position is be yourself. Be yourself. Do whatever you need to do. Can you hear how a person in that position might take that in? Because if this is how it went in childhood, and it did for so many of us, then you don't know what your needs are. You do not know what your needs are. And the worst thing someone can call you is needy. Needy. Needy is a 4-letter word because you got by doing things yourself. You handled your own emotions. You swallowed your own feelings. You took a licking. You kept on ticking, kind of thing. And you just grew yourself up alone in a certain way. So when this is really the underpinning of your childhood, you as a child will likely grow into an adult who in relationships, on the one hand, prides yourself on being easygoing, go with the flow, make no demands on people. But really what's happening is you're kind of disappearing from yourself. The very thing you're afraid the other person will do to you, which is abandon you, is the very thing, how ironic, the very thing many of us do to ourselves when we allow ourselves to live in this space. Now, we allow ourselves to live in this space because we didn't even know it was a space. We just thought, oh, this is how I do life. Do you see? Do you see? Let me know if you're in the chat or if you have access to the chat. Let me know how this is landing. If this resonates, if this stirs you, or if you have any questions about it. I do see some people are entering the chat. Gosh, that was a mouthful, right? That was a mouthful. So for anyone who is not looking for a deep conversation tonight, I think you have to change the channel because this is kind of deep, isn't it? So why don't we do this? Let's take a break, digest, get something to drink, take the dog out for a walk, and meet me back here in a few minutes. And we'll talk about, I'll go to the chat, see what you think. I'm very interested in your point of view and your experiences. And then I'll share some things that you can begin to consider to start to. This is not an overnight switch. This is not, and I'll tell you, if anybody claims that it is, I don't know. I don't know what they're thinking. This requires diligence. This requires some work. This requires some effort. But I promise you this, it's the kind of work that once you get going and you begin to see the benefit of it, I think it's delicious work. Of all the topics I can talk about therapeutically, this is probably the most gratifying because it is something that can be gradually, operative word, gradually undone. And the rewards are astounding. But it takes time and it takes diligence and it takes repetition. And that is the fact of the matter. So you heard it here. Okay, let's take that break. And when we come back, we'll go to the chat and we'll continue with practices you can implement right away to start to reconsider this pattern. You're listening to Who Do You Think You Are on New Thought Media Network. Stay with me.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
What would Louise say? Join us every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Hosted by Reverend Martine Bernard. Explore the wisdom of Louise Hay. Brought to you by New Thought Media Network. Dive into Louise's teachings. Experience healing and empowerment. Reverend Martine shares insights. Connect with a contemporary audience. Unlock your potential. Transform your life with love. Embrace positivity and healing. Join our vibrant community. Ready to join us? Let's spread love and wisdom together. Please like, share, and subscribe. Only on New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
What if the person you think you are is just a fraction of who you truly are? What if years of conditioning and surviving in a challenging world have left you clinging to strategies and beliefs that mask your truest nature? I'm Catherine Duca, psychotherapist and self-esteem coach, and you're listening to Who Do You Think You Are? A show that looks beneath our psychological masks and uncovers our profoundly messy, beautiful, brilliant, tender-hearted essence. Join me as we go in search of the hidden power of our true selves. I'm so glad you're here.
And welcome back. If you are just joining us, we are talking about the very tender subject of self-abandonment. It's a heavy word. It means when we don't have our own back, when we say one thing outwardly, do one thing outwardly, agree to something, go silent on ourselves, all the while we feel something entirely different inside. So we're breaking that down, and we're talking about where that comes from, childhood, and this business of differentiation. I may talk about this more if time permits. Let me go to the chat and see what we have here. I'm so interested in what you have to say and your questions. So going in order, we have Fat Ass Jewelry Company, Argery. Good evening and welcome. Question tonight. Do you think everyone feels lonely just in various degrees? Do you think everyone feels lonely just in various degrees? Well, I don't know that I want to answer that in the yes or no, as much as to say, I think there's a correlation between the more masks we wear, the more walls and shields and cover-ups we have over our authentic self that may be so buried we don't even know what our true self is. I think depending upon the degree of those masks and how layered they are is the degree of loneliness that we feel inside. Because if we feel we can't share who we truly are, what we truly feel, the emotions we feel, if we believe sharing that will cost us, will be abandoned, then that wall that we erect so that nobody detects that is the same wall we live behind. And to that extent, Argery, I would say it's very lonely back there. It's very lonely because nothing old gets out, nothing new or fresh or affirming or validating gets in. And that space is a very lonely space. So rather than yes or no, I think that's a very nuanced question. Thank you for asking it. Michelle, welcome. I spent years using humor to deflect away from my deepest emotions, also feeling deep isolation, not truly connecting on the level I longed for. Well, there you go. You're answering Argery's question. The defense mechanism is humor. That doesn't mean you're not really, really funny, okay? But it means the origin of that trait may have largely been to keep your deepest, most painful emotions at bay. And of course, what can only come of that is isolation on the level at which you're hiding. That's the only way it can go. And the connecting on the level that you longed for. You know, when people say, take this program, do this work, attend that webinar, whatever, live the life of your dreams. Well, I don't know. I think the life of your dreams is a life where you feel connected to others, right? Michelle, it's exactly what you're saying here. Connecting is the stuff that life's joy is made of. Sharing. And you can't share yourself unless you're willing to, your full self, unless you're willing to be vulnerable. And that's where it gets interesting, because that sort of folds back on itself. I'm afraid to be vulnerable because I was like that a few decades ago and it didn't go well. And I was ridiculed or laughed at or ignored. So I'm not doing that anytime soon. So the question becomes, if we're afraid of being vulnerable, how do we then be vulnerable? Okay, hold on. I'll get to that. Janine, welcome. Good to see you. I have a hard time recognizing when I'm abandoning myself until damage has been done to my self-esteem. I have a hard time recognizing when I'm abandoning myself until the damage has been done to my self-esteem. So I have a few journal prompts or thought prompts for yourself. And I was going to wait for later, but let me include them now. If we all ask ourselves, when did I first learn that it was safer to abandon myself than to risk rejection? That may open up an emotional doorway inside. What parts of me have I silenced to be loved? In other words, if we wait until we're in the conversation to claim our truth, if self-abandonment is our thing, it's not going to happen. We have to do the prep work today, tonight, right now, because we don't have time to waste. So you can't leave it to be quick on your feet in the moment. It requires this introspection and reflection. And so Kathy's talking about leaving myself and being so pleasing to others that I'm willing to displease myself. And that's so habitual, I don't even recognize I'm doing it. Well, the time is now to stop and ask myself, what boundaries have I been afraid to set and why? And what no am I afraid to say and why? And what would it mean to choose myself in this moment? Because here's the thing, this self-abandonment response happens so instantaneously that, it's Janine, you're saying it like it is. It happens before we can even catch on. It's automatic. So by asking these questions here, when there is no risk of abandonment because you're just talking to yourself, you can begin to get a handle. You can begin to get insight. And then, and this is the crash course, very crash coursey right now, you can begin to encourage yourself to, the next time when you're in a moment, the next time when you're noticing you're smiling and nodding agreeably when that's the last thing you want to do, in that moment, you can pause. A split second, pause. And in that pause, you can quickly ask yourself, because you've been in this conversation, what's my truth right now? What's my truth? I don't know what my truth is. I'm too scared right now. Okay, that's fine, because you're starting. But if you can learn to insert those pauses and then extend them 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds long, I promise you something very interesting happens there. It's almost a can't miss. You begin to have a little more objectivity because you're not automatically closing that gap of your truth and pleasing the other person. You're widening that gap in 2 seconds. What is it that I really want to say? Because I'm aware my body doesn't want to agree. But look, my mouth is ready to agree. and say something, pleasing. The more you practice rehearsing, stretching that moment, stretching the pause, that's in that tiny micro experiment. That's where you can take the first step toward undoing this process. Now, as I say all the time, my clients always say, but Kathy, what can I do? What can I do? Well, before there is doing, there must be understanding. And so this conversation, and maybe you want to re-listen to this podcast again, listen, read the transcript of it, because you have to slow down the automation. Yellow blinker, right? Slow it down. What am I feeling? I know I'm feeling something, but I'm too afraid to assert myself. Okay, but I did step one. I monitored, I noticed, and I caught myself in that moment. I'll give myself another try next time. We all know the next time will come in 5 minutes, right? So, Janine, I hope that helps. But that's the point. We don't recognize it until it's too late. But even then, we don't necessarily, I didn't until I learned it and experimented. And sometimes it went well, and sometimes it didn't, but then more times it did. And then a lot of times it did. And then I sort of morphed into someone who, much more than I don't, I am able to catch that pause. Okay? All right. Thank you, Janine. And Arjorie again, abandoning the self feels to me like a function of codependence. It is. Are there other ways self-abandonment shows up? Well, under that umbrella of codependence, a lot of things happen because, and I am going to get back to differentiation, because codependence implies a type of enmeshment, a type of, and again, this is on a certain level, in being agreeable with people or my partner or my family member or my boss or whomever. It's like, I don't want any friction. I don't want anything in the way, any discord. I can't handle that. It's too uncomfortable because I'm afraid I'm going to be left, right? So what happens is we have to work at now this is deep work. I'm just saying it here, but it really is deep work in psychotherapy. It doesn't necessarily take a long time, but it takes willingness and a commitment to work on this level. It's like differentiation is, let me explain what that is first. It's neither detachment nor defiance. Differentiation is the ability to stay emotionally connected to someone while staying true to yourself, even if there's a disagreement. So the paradox is staying connected without merging, staying connected, but staying true to yourself. That is the whole thing on which differentiation hinges. So to own your no, and incidentally, I have what I think is a pretty good list of 50 shades of no. If you, how can you get that? You can get that in a number of ways. Email me if you'd like, Catherine@catherineduca.com, and let me know you want the shades of no, and I'll get that to you. Because there are a lot of lovely, polite, nice ways you can say no and be in your truth and be direct and have conviction about it. But in order to own your no, you have to see yourself as a separate person, an autonomous person. And if that didn't happen so much in childhood, if you had to be everything your mother needed you to be, otherwise she wouldn't feel good, then you never learned to stand apart. So it's this dance of separateness and togetherness. So it's holding your perspective without needing other people to agree. It's setting boundaries without necessarily destroying the connection or severing the connection. You see, some people say, well, then just F it. I'll just cut her off. There may be a time and a place to do that, but not usually. Not usually, but if you don't know how to set the boundary because you haven't been able to own your no, because you haven't felt like a separate, autonomous, independent person, it's going to be very hard to do. Very hard to do. So step one is to differentiate yourself and have this thing in your head to choose self-respect over approval. And here's the good news. I'll just tie it up with a bow here. The good news is we are not that kid. We are not that dependent child, that 8-year-old, that 12-year-old, that 16-year-old. We're not trapped in our parents' home. Okay? Because that was the thing. That's what separates being an adult with psychological maturity and being a child. A child is dependent for its survival. And so the child is not going to risk that very thing. But as an adult, you have your own car keys. You have your own apartment. You can come and go. You're not dependent as you once were. And that needs to be absorbed. So I'm going to, in the time we have, and I never have enough time. Incidentally, I'm thinking about putting together an intensive program working on this very topic. I've already started doing that. I'm going to probably announce it next week. But for now, here's something you can do tonight. I did this just maybe 2 weeks ago. It's called mirror work. You can do this tonight. You can, when the podcast ends, you can do this after you wash your face. Okay? Mirror work. You look into your own eyes in the mirror. You don't observe. You're not a spectator. You look into your own eyes and you say, looking deeply, I see you. I see you. I'm sorry you were left all that time ago. I'm sorry. And connect with yourself. This is how you will either begin or you will deepen your sense of differentiation. And of course, your sense of self-compassion. And I'm sorry they left. And I'm sorry that I left. I'm sorry I left you to try to get all the approval you could because you thought you'd be okay if you had enough of that. I'm sorry I left you to your own notion that if you had enough likes, you'd be loved. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You see, who do you think you are? Who you think you are, someone who needs approval and validation from the outside, is not who you really are. Who you really are is a kid in an adult body who needs to hear from your higher self, from your higher consciousness. I see you. I get you. And I'm sorry. And I love you. And I'm here now. And that starts to both dislodge the estrangement that you may feel from yourself, and it starts to integrate. You bring this child to you psychologically, metaphorically. You bring the child to you and you embrace that part of you that has held the loneliness, the self-esteem hits, the belief that she wasn't all that. And you give that to yourself tonight when you wash your face. I did this the other night. I'll tell you, it was powerful. It was really powerful. And for me, I'll tell you what happened. I was really intense. I mean, I didn't plan it. I caught my gaze in the mirror, and then I leaned in, and I found myself having this exact conversation. And I'll tell you what happened for me. I mean, it's going to be different for everyone, but I began to smile. I began to smile at myself. And I'll tell you the truth, it was the warmest, most beautiful. It makes me emotional now thinking about it. It was a beautiful moment I had with myself. And I think that moment is waiting there for you too. So, mirror work. There's so much more wonderful aspects to this. But as always, the clock on the wall is telling me that I have to wind down. So listen, let's all make a concerted effort to be aware that we've done the very thing we're most terrified of. We've abdicated ourselves. We've left ourselves behind. We've vanished. We don't have to do that anymore. We did it, and it probably served us back then, and let's thank ourselves for coming up with that invention. But now let's consider and work toward something that serves us even better. Authenticity, genuineness, positive self-regard, autonomy, independence. A differentiated self that is both connected to and able to stand apart at the same time. Okay, I'm going to mention something. I've got literally 2 minutes. Listen, if you're listening to this show, if you're attracted to this station, you don't need me to tell you this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. We are all aware that the SNAP program is drying up in a week or so. As of November 1, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program is coming to an end and will be ended for as long as the government is shut down. This means that many, many Americans, families with children, will not have the benefit that gives them enough to eat. Now, if you're a part of my audience, that really bothers you. That deeply gets under your skin, as it does mine. I know this. And I know that you believe that love is a verb. Love is not a nicety. Love is a verb. Love is not a spectator sport. Love is not looking at the television, reading the news and saying to yourself and meaning it, you know, oh my God, that's terrible. That's awful. What are these people going to do? Okay, that's a start, but that's not really love in action. Love in action, I submit to you, is finding some way to offer tangible help to the millions of people who are going to lose this benefit, people with disabilities, low-income families, veterans and active military personnel, single adults who are food insecure, which is a nice way of saying hungry. So those of us who had the privilege of having a delicious meal today, this evening, I know that you will not have that meal without also being mindful of the many who may have enough to eat tonight, but imagine the anxiety to think, oh my, in 2 days, whatever it is, in a few days, this is going to run out. And then what will I do? Imagine the anxiety and the heartbreak of that. I know not one of you wants to stand by and know that that's happening without doing what you can to make someone's life easier, to have someone know that someone else is caring about them. They are not forgotten. Okay, they are not abandoned. So, thank you Thank you. Dear listeners, wide receivers, time to go. Let's go out in the world and let's be our own person as much as we can, in love and in tenderness and in gratitude. I have loved spending this time with you. Thank you so much. I look forward to next week, and I will meet you back here. Until then, know that you are loved, and more than that, you are love. You are love. Spread it around. Till next week, I'm Catherine Duca. You've been listening to Who Do You Think You Are? I know who you are. You are magnificent. That's who you are. Okay, I'll see you next time. Take care. Good night.